Competitive video gaming has become a multi-million-dollar industry, but as Errol Barnett learned, embarking on an esports career comes with plenty of risks. Here's a preview of his latest CBSN original, Esports, The Price of the Grind.
This is kind of crazy.
Esports has gone up like a rocket, boom, straight up.
I'm living a dream for a lot of people.
The money that's coming in now is insane.
You can see the stress in their face and in their eyes.
Which is why we have all these terrible issues with burnout.
I get worried about hot money screwing this up.
You know, I'm not just playing a game for fun anymore.
Randolph Ramsay, editor-in-chief of Gamespot, joins me now from San Francisco. So, Randolph, what's contributed to the rise of esports over the past few years?
Well, it's really been a couple of things. First up, the games have been generally made more competitive. You've seen a lot of game makers like Activision and Riot actually create games that are specifically meant to be competitive against two teams or individual players. But really the major thing, I think, has been the rise in accessibility for the audience. You've had sites like YouTube, you've had sites like Twitch, really make it much easier to see people play games online anywhere around the world. All you need is a computer and an internet connection. You don't need a cable subscription, you don't need anything else like that, and you can be an esports fan.
What does the daily life of an esport athlete actually look like?
Well, for some of the top people out there, it really is a lifestyle that is not very different to what you'd expect from another professional athlete in any other sport. Well, these people train, you know, for a majority of their day. They're out there playing 8 to 10 hours every day just to make sure their skills are up. In a lot of cases, some of the top players also live with their teammates. So, you know, the teams themselves actually pay for their accommodation. They live in the same houses. They train together. They work together. They play together to try and get that real strong bond between all of their teammates together. So it is a full-time job. It's not just sitting down and playing video games like many of us would actually do.
Are there any risks for these gamers when they're pursuing some sort of a career in esports?
Well, I think the risks really are, you know, probably the same that you'd expect with, you know, a lot of people who are trying to become professionals in any sporting field. You know, a lot of these people actually have a lot of stresses in terms of, you know, having to do as much practice and training that they actually have to do. And for a lot of esports professionals, they actually come straight from high school or are very young, and they're thrust into the spotlight where, you know, unlike some other sort of major sports athletes out there, esports professionals actually have a lot more of a closer connection with their fans through social media, through the streams that they do. So they actually have a lot more interaction with their fans on a day-to-day basis. And in some cases, not a lot of that stuff is always going to be positive. In some cases it is, but it does put a lot of extra added pressure, both sort of physically and mentally for an esports professional.
You know, there was a Goldman Sachs study that caught our eye, and it says that esports will become a $3 billion industry by 2022. Do you see that as a fair evaluation in just that short period of time?
Well, I think a lot of people are hoping that is going to be that big. Over the last couple of years, you've seen a lot of people pour an enormous amount of money into esports. You've seen a lot of people who traditionally invest in more popular sports like the NBA or the NFL actually coming into esports and buying their own teams. In terms of how viable that actually is, I think it's actually a pretty good chance. You know, a lot of the esports organizations are, you know, rapidly evolving to try and make their product a little bit more like what you'd see in traditional sports. So in the past, where you've had esports teams not really focus on a geographic area, you know, a lot of the newer leagues are actually trying to emulate a sports franchise by having, you know, individual teams based in individual locations. What that means, it's good for the audience to actually, you know, become more attached to a specific team, and it's also good for sponsors because, you know, they know that these teams are actually going to be, you know, be there year in, year out. So I think that $3 billion evaluation is probably a pretty fair assessment.
So fascinating. Randolph Ramsay, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And you can stream CBSN Original Esports, The Price of the Grind, this Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern on CBSN. And you can also stream it on our website at cbsnews.com/esports.